She walked into a world she didn't belong to. A $4 blind date in a restaurant where water cost more than her week's wages. Mira, the daughter of a housekeeper, sat alone beneath glittering chandeliers, holding on to hope and dignity. When her date never showed, she quietly asked for the bill, unaware that someone was watching. Evan Drake, the billionaire's son, saw more than her faded clothes. He saw courage, grace, and a kindness that money couldn't buy. That small act, paying for her meal, sparked a connection that would change both their lives. The restaurant shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, its air filled with the gentle hum of quiet conversations and the faint clinking of fine silverware. Every table gleamed beneath layers of pristine white linen, and every guest carried themselves with the easy confidence of wealth and power. At the center of this elegant world sat a young woman in a worn cardigan, her hands wrapped tightly around a modest purse as if it held her courage. Her name was Mira, the daughter of a housekeeper. She had spent weeks saving just enough to afford this one special evening, a $4 blind date in a place where even the napkins looked expensive. Her heart raced as she glanced at her phone, praying her date wouldn't see the uncertainty hiding behind her polite smile. If you believe in compassion, hope, and stories that celebrate the goodness still left in humanity, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Voice of Kindness story. Your support helps us keep spreading warmth in a cold world. Myra's childhood had been filled with the scent of soap and polish, watching her mother scrub marble floors and clean windows that looked out over lives they'd never live. She'd often see the women of Ridgeview Estate glide past in designer dresses and diamond earrings, their laughter echoing like music she wasn't meant to hear. But her mother never showed bitterness. She would simply say, "You're never defined by what you have, only by what you do to rise above it." Those words had become Myra's anchor through years of judgment, disappointment, and endless struggle. So when a coworker at the small cafe where she served coffee suggested setting her up on a blind date, Mira hesitated. Still, something inside her whispered, maybe it's time to try. All Mira wanted that night was a small taste of the life she'd always watched from afar, to laugh without worry, to belong somewhere, even for just a few hours. She had dressed as best she could, a black sweater borrowed from her roommate and a crimson ribbon her mother had pressed with care, smiling as she said, "You look like a star from those old films." But the moment Mira stepped into that glittering restaurant, her confidence began to fade. Every chandelier sparkled like it was mocking her, every whisper felt sharp enough to cut. Her date hadn't arrived, yet she could already sense the judgment in the air. Eyes glancing at her scuffed shoes, her trembling hands, her plain clothes that told a story money could never hide. The waiters passed by with polite professionalism, their smiles too thin to feel kind. She tried to look calm, sipping at her glass of water as if it were fine wine, stretching each moment to delay ordering anything she couldn't afford. Inside her purse lay exactly $4.27, the careful savings of a week's work. At a nearby table sat Evan Drake, heir to one of the wealthiest families in the city. He was used to masks, people who spoke to him with fake laughter and eyes that measured opportunity more than kindness. Yet, something about the girl by the window caught him off guard. She wasn't pretending. There was a quiet sincerity in the way she twisted her napkin, the way her gaze flickered toward the entrance, holding on to hope long after it should have faded. An hour slipped by. The lively murmur of the restaurant softened into a dull ache as Mira slowly realized her date wasn't coming. She forced a small smile, but it cracked under the weight of disappointment. Her throat tightened as tears threatened to fall. She refused to let them. Not here. Not in front of these people who lived in comfort she could barely imagine. With trembling fingers, she grabbed her purse and asked softly for the bill, eager to disappear before her heartbreak became a spectacle. But someone had already seen everything. From across the room, Evan quietly signaled the waiter and asked to cover her check. When Mira reached into her purse, the waiter offered her a gentle smile and said, "It's already been paid for, miss." She froze, confused, scanning the room, until her eyes found his. He met her gaze with a quiet nod, not out of sympathy, but out of genuine kindness, the kind that silently says, "You matter. You deserve better than this." Myra's cheeks burned with a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. She managed a faint smile and mouthed a soft thank you before turning away. The cold air outside greeted her like reality itself, sharp, biting, yet strangely freeing. Her heart ached, but somewhere beneath the pain was a fragile warmth she couldn't explain. She had no idea who that man was, and she certainly didn't think she'd ever see him again. But Evan couldn't forget her. There was something hauntingly familiar in the sadness behind her smile, something that mirrored the emptiness he carried despite his wealth. His life, though wrapped in luxury, felt hollow, crowded with people who wanted his money, his power, his name, but never him. By morning, curiosity had turned into resolve. He made a few calls, quietly asking who the girl at the restaurant might have been. Within hours, he learned the truth. Mira was the daughter of a housekeeper who worked for his family's Ridgeview estate, the same property where his mother's trusted employee, Clara, had served for decades. The following weekend, when Evan visited the estate, he saw Mira again. She was helping her mother clean the marble staircase, her head bowed, her movements brisk and careful. For a brief moment, he hesitated, unsure if approaching her would embarrass her. Then he smiled gently, thanked Clara for her years of service, and turned to Mira. "You have a kind heart," he said quietly. "Don't ever let the world make you hide it." Mira froze. The son of her mother's employer speaking to her, not with authority, but with sincerity, felt unreal, like a scene from a story she would never belong to. In the weeks that followed, Evan began stopping by the cafe where she worked. He never ordered anything extravagant, just a plain coffee, always sitting in the corner, watching her handle rude customers with patience and grace. Slowly, their small conversations grew longer, awkward smiles turned into laughter, and guarded politeness into something warmer. She discovered he wasn't the arrogant rich man she had imagined. And he, in turn, discovered that she wasn't fragile, just someone who'd had to fight too long to stand where she was. One afternoon, as they talked about dreams and second chances, Evan told her about his family's scholarship program, one rarely mentioned to the public. "You should apply," he urged. Mira shook her head. "I'm not special enough for that." He smiled. "It's not about being special. It's about being ready for the chance when it comes." With his encouragement, she filled out the application. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Bold letters at the top read, "Congratulations." She had been granted a full scholarship to study business and management, an opportunity that would change her life forever. When Mira told her mother the news, they both broke down in tears. Tears that carried years of struggle, disbelief, and joy. It felt like the weight of their entire past had lifted. Word spread quickly through the Drake estate about the Maid's daughter who had earned the attention and respect of the billionaire's heir. Some gossiped that Evan had lost his sense, that his compassion was misplaced. But he paid no mind. He saw something in Mira that others overlooked, a quiet strength, a self-respect no wealth could ever imitate. Years rolled by, and Mira didn't just graduate, she did it with top honors. Her success wasn't only her own, it was a promise kept to every dreamer who'd been told they weren't enough. Instead of chasing luxury, she poured her heart into creating a foundation for women like her, those born with limited chances but limitless potential. She named it the New Dawn Initiative, inspired by that single evening when a stranger's kindness had rewritten her destiny. When the day came to launch her organization, Evan stood proudly among the crowd, not as the powerful heir everyone whispered about, but as the friend who had believed in her when no one else did. Because sometimes, true kindness doesn't come with applause or grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as paying for a stranger's meal, offering a few words of faith, or opening one small door when the world keeps closing others. Myra's story wasn't about privilege or power, it was a reminder of how compassion can bridge worlds that money cannot. If her story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and follow Voice of Kindness Stories. Every action helps us reach more hearts with tales that prove goodness still exists. And now, we'd love to hear from you. What's one moment of kindness you'll never forget? Because sometimes, one small act can change the course of someone's entire life.